Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. I have with me Mr. Kanwal Sibal. Sirji, Namaskar, welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine, sir. It's an honor to have you on the platform and to learn from you most than anything else. So, what's happening? I mean, we thought there were negotiations. So, basically, what one big lesson before we get into the specifics of the conflict in Iran is that never trust America with any negotiations. Am I right, sir?
Well, absolutely, because look, even in this case of Iran, the nuclear deal negotiated by Obama in 2015 was a very good deal from the American point of view, and the Iranians yielded a lot. In fact, I wrote articles at that time, and if you were to look at them, I actually said that I'm surprised that a country like Iran has compromised its national sovereignty to this extent in order to reach this agreement with the Americans. Can you imagine handing over their entire stockpile of enriched uranium to the Russians, and then agreeing that they will limit their enrichment to 3 point whatever percent, and very intrusive IAEA inspections, etc., etc. They did it. It was negotiated by the U.S. government, and then the U.S. government itself walks out of the deal. Trump walks out of the deal. And then what does he say? That I want to negotiate a deal by which Iran will abjure its nuclear ambitions. But that was precisely what was done in 2015. And how many years have passed since 2015? 11 years. And all this while, what have the Americans and the Israelis, especially Israelis, saying? Oh, they are 1 month away, they're 15 days away, they're 2 months away, they're 3 months away from a nuclear weapon. So if for 11 years, they were nowhere near a nuclear weapon. And this time, twice now this has happened that while negotiations were going on with the Iranians, suddenly the 12-day war began. But it is worse this time because, as has been said by the Omani Minister of Foreign Affairs publicly on US television, that Iran had
That was
conceded
embarrassing.
all the demands of the Americans. And he listed out all those demands that the Americans had. And then while the negotiations are going on and the date for the next round is fixed in Geneva, they attack Iran. So then what you say is absolutely right. How do you trust the Americans? In our own nuclear deal, in our own trade deal, you can see how Trump has been behaving. So what trust can you place in the way Trump and the Americans negotiate? There are a lot of lessons to be learned, but nevertheless, compulsion is that America, being what it is, the biggest economy in the world, the strongest military power, the most technologically advanced, with tremendous capacity to invest. Uh, so they do not want to go beyond a certain point in challenging the United States because the cost of that, especially under a very unpredictable Trump, can be very high. So they accept a lot what America is doing in a pragmatic way. That even if there are aspects of American policy which are uh, which are problematic and in some cases condemnable, so long as you're not a victim of them directly, you don't want to get into the bad books of the Americans.
Mm.
I think America should show more self-restraint because that's the only way. Because external constraints on America in the near future cannot be imposed. So that's where the problem is.
Okay, now let me just take a broader view, sir. You've got the
Mm.
region where you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got UAE, you've got Qatar, you've got Bahrain, you've got Kuwait, who basically got hit right now. Saudi Arabia initially was very resistant. Yesterday, the first missile came on their airbase. They're like, bloody use everything, take them out and all that. This is a complete flip from UAE. Fair enough. UAE's did not want, the Iranian regime there, and that's something which is now pretty evident. Qatar was always wishy-washy. Kuwait was a quiet partner. But this whole sudden flip of the Saudi Arabia, this thing, was this all planned? Why am I saying this, sir? because Wall Street Journal has put out a report today morning. Push from Saudis, Israel helped move Trump to attack Iran. U.S. intelligence assessment saw no imminent threat, but regional allies argued how the now was the time to strike. This is the
You
headline.
know, you never know which intelligence agent plants which story in the American media. This kind of a thing goes on in the American system, and that's how they create narratives. This may be true, this may not be true. However, if you look at what has happened in recent years, the rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, exchange of ambassadors, where the top uh, Iranian officials like Larijani have been visiting Saudi Arabia. Uh, so all this was being done in order to stabilize the situation, and China was part of this in terms of bringing Saudi Arabia and Iran together. Now, of course, Saudi Arabia has traditionally very close ties with the Americans, and therefore one can understand that even while Saudi Arabia is engaging Iran and trying to establish some kind of normalcy in ties, they will not give up their U.S. Relationship. So they can also balance. Now, they know they're very vulnerable to any Iranian attack on them, as was proved when the Houthis made some very targeted attack on their oil installations. They learned their lesson, and then they realized that all their plans of Saudi development in Saudi Arabia, economic development in Saudi Arabia post the oil uh, uh, phase uh, depended on Saudi Arabia opening up,
Hmm.
attracting investment. Their nine project was immense, huge. They really wanted to open up. They wanted
Yeah.
huge foreign investment coming in, and they knew that this can be held hostage to any tensions, serious tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That if Iran attacked Saudi Arabia, its oil installations, or generally there was instability, then countries won't come and invest. So they, for purely pragmatic reasons, therefore they were willing to have some kind of normalcy in relations with Iran. Therefore, uh, now, as you know, when the Israelis hit uh, Qatar, then the region got a little concerned about Israel's expansionist plans because they are in Syria, they are in Lebanon, they have ex- they have they have expanded as much as they can and continue to do so in terms of realizing that vision of greater Israel. So that has brought them closer to Pakistan, and that, in a sense, uh, you know, made them feel more vulnerable, etc., etc. Now, in this background, for them to actually encourage the Americans to attack Iran, knowing that American uh, regime changes in the region have not at all resulted in any kind of stability and have actually sown the seeds of great instability, including the rise of ISIS and all these Islamic
Yeah. Yeah.
groups, extremists, which Saudi Arabia does not want. I mean, it's totally contrary to what they're trying to do in terms of opening up and reducing the role of Wahhabis and everything else, and turning their back as much as they can to the Wahhabist ideology and making Saudi Arabia a more open state. And it's taken some very bold steps in that direction. So even that doesn't make sense because he would know the result of US intervention would actually be greater rise of greater anti-American feeling, which automatically in an Islamic country gets resulted in Islamic extremism, because that's what they go back to in terms of getting their inspiration and their ideology and their emotional satisfaction when they challenge the great Satan, which they call the United States of America. So I'm not sure whether this report is correct.
When you look at the geopolitical situation in the region, the first thing that the Iranians has done is basically they've hit back at the Gulf. I personally thought they would do something different this time because the last game they had played with the Americans and the Israelis was basically focused on the Israelis. And I thought that they would play a different game because it didn't really work or didn't really come to what they expected at that time. And this whole attack on the Gulf is interesting. So how do you put this across, and what is your assessment? Is this basically trying to put pressure on Trump's soft underbelly?
Well, let me analyze it this way. Why does America have bases in this region and big ones
Mm.
in Qatar, in Iraq,
In Korea,
in Bahrain?
the entire-
Why? One, of course, could have been against the Soviet or Russian influence in this region, which in any case, uh, especially after the changeover in Syria, where
Mm,
the Russians have received a major setback, the Russians are no longer those kind of active players in this region. But the other was always against Iran because U.S. antagonism towards Iran or hostility date back to 1979, and all the Shia Sunni business and the vulnerability of the Sunni states vis-a-vis Iran, the fact that they felt that their own Shia population, including in Saudi Arabia or for that matter, Bahrain, can be activated uh,
yeah.
by Iran against the ruling regimes, etc., etc. Um, s- so uh, the Iran threat. Uh, so the bases were actually as a kind of insurance against Iran. Now, when the United States you know, masses this massive armada in the region, clearly with an intention to launch a military operation against Iran. So what does Iran say? Iran says that we are going to attack your bases. And where are these bases in the region? These bases are in the countries that you mentioned. So Iran will attack them. Now, these countries can say you're violating our sovereignty, which may technically be true. But the fact is they're hosting bases which will be used by the United States in its confrontation, military confrontation with Iran. So, therefore, I was just wondering why. Look, it's easy for me to say that I'm not in the wargaming room in the Pentagon, but I just don't know, purely as a layman and based on common sense. Have they thought this through? Have they have they understood what this can lead to in terms of the consequences of what they have done? Now,
Mm,
the terrible thing in this is that if this thing continues, and the fact that Iran has now attacked these countries actually creates a huge problem for the future. A, it can lead to progressively countries who are investing in these regions in a big way of rethinking whether it is safe to invest. Whether it's safe to invest. Number one. Number two, they've created all these hubs as in Dubai and elsewhere for international aviation. And if the region remains in turmoil, what do? You can't overfly this region. There's always a risk of, actually, you won't be able to do that. Entire international traffic and this and that, and all the impact of that downstream in so many ways, it will be felt. It's extremely destabilizing. And for us, look the consequences of this 8.9 million people in this area, 38% of our remittances coming from there, 45% of our oil coming from there, etc., etc. In a very unstable situation, how do we protect our interests? And this ITU2, IMEC, all that stuff. Now, if the assumption is that you will destroy Iran to this extent and have a regime change there, that they will lose their Shia identity and everything else, and they'll embrace the Sunni states of West Asia and be hunky dory, and America will withdraw its bases, will not need them anymore, etc., etc. Is that a viable scenario to contemplate? I think This whole thing has been driven by domestic politics. Trump's fact he got a big slap in his face because of the Supreme Court decision on tariffs and the Epstein file, which they are heavily detecting in order to protect important people. Uh, so, unfortunately, their domestic politics is driving their international politics. And the result of that has been this muscle flexing. I mean, he wants a Nobel Peace Prize for peacemaking. It unleashes such a serious conflict. So, so peace mongering through war mongering. I mean, that seems to be his strategy.
It's quite funny, sir, because now when we look at the situation, if they, I don't know, sir. Like, okay, let's put the common sense aside, and let's say, okay, fine. They wanted to attack Iran. Fair enough. Uh, they wanted to make that protests and everything like that as a sub cause. Did you completely mistime it that the protests happened in December and you're attacking in February? Because
But that is, you
if
see,
I
that
was
is,
anybody, I would have instigated the protest and then attacked at the same time.
well, well, a couple of things. One is that they may have felt that by creating this kind of internal turmoil, they could potentially perhaps overthrow the regime. That's why um, they got this as a Palvi. He brought him out from some discarded box somewhere and
Clown.
started projecting him as the future emperor of Iran. So that didn't cease. The second thing is, of course, they had to prepare for this, and they took a long time preparing this. They had to move their aircraft carriers, they had to move arms and ammunition in this area. They had to make sure that they intervened in such a way that the casualties to the Americans were either totally avoided or were minimal. So it needed a lot of careful planning because if American soldiers had been killed or there was severe damage to American military equipment, including potentially an aircraft carrier, I mean, they don't need to sink it. I think it's unsinkable. But if they actually attacked and caused damage, that will be a big, big blow to US president. So I think they have to plan it. And that's what they've been doing. Plus, there was this constant pressure from Israel that after precisely what you said, that after this internal revolt, uh, the regime has been weakened, its international uh, image has been damaged severely because of all this narrative, which may be true, which may not be true, one doesn't know, that the regime has brutally killed 3,500, and the figure has gone up even to 50,000 by some fellows
That is
of
just,
their own
yeah.
people, and Trump has used this when he explained why he was attacking Iran, that a regime that kills its own people and this and that. I've never understood why. Two things. I'm saying purely empirically. I mean, I don't want to sound anti-Israel, but if Israel can kill 60,000, well, that's okay. Huh? But if the Iranian regime kills 3, 4, 5, 6,000, whatever the figure is, that's not okay. If the United States, through its military interventions in this region in the past, can kill thousands and indirectly cause the deaths of thousands of others, that's all right because they are not their own people. As if, committing atrocities against people who have not done anything to you is more justified than killing your own people. I mean, I don't see the logic of that. And so, using this as an argument, however deplorable the action of the Iranian regime may be, does not give right to the United States to attack a country. Now, there is this whole thing about the uh, the responsibility to protect, under which they intervened in Libya, because there was a possibility that Gaddafi would wreak vengeance on the protesters and this and that. But there was a UN resolution. So if you think that there is this problem, go to the UN, and under the responsibility to protect doctrine, then get international support. But not that either. Even it's not even a coalition of the willing which they managed to forge when they attacked Libya and other places. Here is only US and Israel. And therefore, it strengthens the narrative that for some reason Israel is able to pull the strings and push United States into a decision which is in Israel's interest and which is controlled by the Israeli lobby. So there's no coalition of the willing either.
Hmm. When you this is also quite funny because when we see this whole region, sir, see something had to. I mean, when I look at it from the American perspective, something had to be done about Iran. It's been a thorn in their eye for a long time, and of course, as you say, the Israeli lobby has been after it. We need to do something about Iran. It's destabilizing and this and that. Considering just for a moment that even let's say the Saudis and the Emiratis are on board and everything like that, fair enough. Considering all of them decided, okay, yeah, this guy needs to go. Fantastic. I'm not very sure whether they've actually wargamed this thing, sir. Because at the end of it, what they're doing right now is just hitting. If you need this guy to go, then take out the leadership and be done with it. You take out Khamenei, you take out his, one, two people here, knowing very well that they've got a succession plan in place. So what are they going to do in the next 3 4 days? Just keep killing these leaders? What are they? I mean, somehow the war plan doesn't give me a lot of confidence as to the end objective.
See, a couple of things. One is that it is a fact that when the 12-day war occurred, Israel was very heavily punished. And in fact, punished so much that they themselves were interested in ending that that phase of conflict. Uh, so there is always that uh, potential of Israel suffering enormous damage uh, because of the Iranian capabilities. Last time, Trump stayed his hand, he bombed the nuclear installations or whatever else, but he didn't go beyond that. Although, mind you, at that time he had said that we know where Khamenei is, and if we need to take him out, we'll take him out. He said that at that time. So this time, uh, it is a very concerted effort by Israel and United States for regime change, an open call for regime change. Um, uh, oh, incidentally, let me go back a little bit and then I'll come back to this, what I was saying. Now, what did the Americans want from Iran this time? Absolutely maximalist demands, as has come out in the press, that no stockpile,
Hmm.
no enrichment beyond 3 point whatever percent, and whatever is enriched cannot be reversed in terms of making some kind of fission material or
Right.
whatever it is. Uh, Very intrusive uh, IAE inspections and a commitment that they'll never acquire nuclear weapons and this and that. Um, so, uh, in that sense, uh, Iran was giving full satisfaction to the Americans to avoid a conflict. What has not come out is that what did Iran want in return? I'm sure they would have wanted the lifting of sanctions,
Yes, sir.
at least some sanctions, because that has been this problem in terms of Iran's economy and the system that they have created within the country of certain elements who are adept at smuggling and violating or bypassing the sanctions, creating networks and this and that of illegal, in inverted commas, trade all over the world. And the UAE has been a big hub of hub for that, etc., etc. So um, the Iranian uh, regime has been able to survive. Now, as Besant said a few weeks ago, before these public demonstrations began, he actually said that it was their strategy. They caused a run on a particular bank, forced the central bank to intervene and devalue the currency, which led to bizarre protests. And then they had their infiltrators on the ground, which then sowed mayhem. So all that didn't work. Now, in terms of have they thought through the consequences of what they are doing? I'll come back to what I said again. I don't think they can. They can start a game, but they can't control the end game. The- Look, Iran is 90 million people. It has internal problems. The regime may not be popular, but there's very solid support for the regime. They have certain military capabilities, and I think, generally speaking, if you try for a country like Iran force a regime change from the outside, I think normal human behavior would be that even those who are against the regime for local reasons would then start supporting the regime against an external threat. So
That's how
especially,
always things go, sir.
yeah. So therefore, can they break down Iranian resistance permanently and emasculate the country to that extent? I mean, can they guarantee that? And then what will happen? They'll remain present in the region. Their aircraft carriers will remain present in the region. Their forces will remain present in the region. They'll have tighter uh, military agreements with specific countries who will then want this in order to protect themselves against a future resurgence of Iran. Look at this is what's happening with Russia. Russia was weakened, in no position to threaten Western Europe, but they assumed that Russia one day going to be resurgent. Therefore, let's start expanding NATO. Let's keep Russia under pressure so that it can never pose a threat to us. The same logic can apply here. That more presence, more military presence, etc., more arms sales to make sure that in the future, Iran, after it's a big country and a powerful country,
Yeah, yeah.
pose a threat to these countries. So it's a mess. And I can't see how anybody can plan ahead within the parameters of this mess.
It's quite funny, because when I mean, you have to have some sort of an end game in sight, which is probably okay, fine. Let's say, okay, we want this, we can adjust with this, we can't adjust with this. Objectives of a war, like when Putin went into Ukraine, he put across tuck, 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 tuck. These are my five objectives, and he's been stuck with it. We went into Operation Sindoor, our objectives were very clear: one, two, three, four. Here, I don't see a spelled out objective, which is I've never seen a war started without an objective, sir.
Yeah,
It's a
because see, there are people, some sensible people who are questioning why United States has entered into this conflict. And on top of it, is illegal within their own political system because only a Congress can authorize a declaration of war. But of course, he has not declared war. He just acted. In effect, what he is doing is engaging in a war without declaring it. And I suppose he'll argue that I have not launched any war, and therefore I don't need congressional authorization. Is whimsical, it is petulant, it is egotistical, it is driven by domestic politics, it is driven by the Israeli lobby, it is driven by the need to distract attention from, as I said, the decision, US Supreme Court decision on tariffs, and more importantly, the Epstein files and everything else. So the foreign policy has become a, a, how should I say, uh, an extension of the domestic troubles and ambitions and problems of Trump.
but the MAGA doesn't agree to all this, sir.
Therefore, there's no planning of the kind that you said.
The MAGA doesn't agree to this. MAGA is dead against this.
What does that mean? He's doing it. He's doing it.
I mean, Tucker Carlson, as they call him, he's gone
Mm.
nuts, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that kind of people are dead against what Trump wants to do.
Yeah, but we've seen this time and again that there are elements and lobbies within these countries who are sane and sensible and who pretty vocal and give good arguments to oppose what the leadership is doing. But And of course, we say, in a democracy, leaders are sensitive to public opinion and this and that. But time and again, we've seen that these countries, the leaders of these countries, do things which does not have the support of public opinion at large. But they do it, and the reason they do it, Adi, is this: they don't suffer. They don't.
Yeah.
There's no accountability, and that people don't suffer. Now, the kind of mayhem Americans have done in the Middle East and the misery they've caused to millions of people, if you look at the entire gamut of what they have done, the Americans don't suffer anything. No American suffers. No American leader suffers. They don't know what suffering is. So for them, it's okay. Other people are suffering. It doesn't matter. There is this moral deadening of the society because they have all the comforts. There's no accountability. There's no punishment. So they can keep doing what they want to do.
That is the point, no, sir. There is no blowback on the American mainland.
Exactly. Exactly. That's where the problem is. There's no punishment. There's no sanctions. There's nothing.
Now, when we
And
look
they
at Iran, sir, he's creating pressure on the Gulf Street. He's hitting civilian targets, which is very interesting to me. I mean, the Fairmont in Dubai, it's a beautiful hotel. The Central Park in Dubai, they hit some sort of a something came and fell on the Burj, and
yeah.
something came across to the Jumeirah and stuff like that. Why would they do something like that? Why would the Iranians do something like that? Is Dubai the main centerpiece? So you kind of create that pressure in Dubai so that you can, uh, you know, probably showcase to the world.
Well, difficult to say. On the face of it, I think what you are saying is right. That they could have limited their attacks. Assuming this was done willfully, they could have limited their attacks to the US military bases. But in reaching the military bases, if you're using these drones and this and that, you have to go through, I suppose, built up areas of the kind that you are describing, and therefore accidents can happen. Uh, I've read something which may or may not be true, which has come from the Middle East source, that the UAE said they shot down the drone and the debris of that fell in this
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
So that could also be a reason why that happened. Uh,
Mm,
but if Iran said that, all right, if you're going to do what you intend doing to us in terms of destroying our infrastructure and doing everything else, then we will cause a lot of harm to your interests in this region. And those interests are investment and everything else, which is these countries receive enormous investment from the West. Uh,
mm,
and Europe is also complicit in this. And the Europeans are very much involved in this area in a very big way. So it frightens away. It risks to frighten away future investment in this region, and uh, and as I said, very serious repercussions down the line in so many areas which you today cannot anticipate, because this area, in a sense, has become a very important hub source of many of the things that uh, are on the agenda of the international community, even ours. So look, for example, UAE artificial intelligence hub, green hydrogen,
mm.
whole
There's a
lot
lot
of
which is happening in the US.
projects, space. They're also there in space. So a lot of the advanced areas in which the world is interested, the finances, and also to some extent the manpower, trained manpower, is in part coming from this region or will come from this region, uh, especially the investment part.
Mm,
All all that is going to be disturbed very seriously. And in our case, and I'll come back to this, if this continues and if the consequences of this are long lasting, our interests will be very seriously affected.
yeah, yeah.
But
It can't
we
go
are
on
not
for
in
long.
position to say anything. We are not in position to say anything.
Mm. When we see some, when we see the region and we see Israel, um, they've already murmurs coming across Turkey's next. That's that was very interesting. Turkey's next, and this and that. The murmurs coming across. What do you think Israel's plan is going forward? Iran, whatever said and done, so Iran is going to get weakened after this quite a bit. Iran is going to weaken quite a bit, and there will be opportunities for infiltration into Iran from the Azeri side, from the Iraqi side, from the Balochistan side. That opportunity will be even more open because every time you go through a war, there's a certain capacity, especially for a country like Iran, which doesn't have the economics. Uh, let's just you know, I just want to talk separately Israel and separately Iran as the last question. What do you think is the future, sir?
Well, when the Iraq-Iran war started and lasted 6, 8 years or whatever, Iran was debilitated. But it came back. And number two, and this astonishes me, frankly, that despite these years and years of sanctions, economic squeeze of all kinds, denial of markets, their oil and this and that, look at the military capacity they have created. In fact, in so many areas, uh, they have gone ahead. They're even more advanced than us in terms of indigenous capability. I, they initially giving, they were the ones who were giving these drones to Russia.
Mhm.
They have these hypersonic missiles. They have been able to have pinpoint accuracy when they attacked the Weizmann Center in Tel Aviv and their bases and everything else. So they have the capacity to make these uh, attacks, which
Costly.
means that they have mastered certain areas of defense despite all the restrictions imposed on them. That knowledge
Rocketry is
is
interesting, yes, sir.
rocketry. That I was told by a former SINCPAC chief some years ago that Iran has the most advanced torpedoes, which can be a huge problem in the Persian Gulf because they are high-speed torpedoes and some of the most advanced in the world, and they are a danger. So they have developed these capabilities. Now that knowledge is there, and that knowledge won't go away. So they can rebuild. They can rebuild. Now, let's say for a moment that there is a change in the leadership which becomes more open, more engaging, wants to have good relations with neighboring countries. But in reality, even if that were to happen, they're not going to actually stop developing their military capabilities. I mean, like we do, we constantly,
Everybody will.
constantly
Anybody
upgrading
will.
our military capabilities because you want deterrence.
Yeah.
Even if you have friends around, you want deterrence. So they continue to build up their deterrent capabilities. So I don't think that you can, even if Iran seems at the moment weakened, that you can assume that they'll be so weakened that that others need not feel. Others feel that they are now very secure, and Iran has been permanently defanged. I don't think so.
And what about Israel, sir?
Israel is playing with fire. Uh, they have, of course, expanded their base by. Look, you know, what is Israel doing? Gaza, okay. But in the West Bank, what is the justification for that? Israel, the messianic leaders of Israel today, uh, they are now caught in a process that they can't step back. They just can't step back. And that process will lead them to continue to expand as much as they can. Now they're talking about this hexagon alliance. Complete nonsense. They've talked about it in the context of our prime minister's visit. That we're not going to join any bloody alliance of any kind, uh, especially with Israel and its expansionist policies. Uh, so Israel, Look, we have very good relations with them. We have a lot of equities. They have come to our support. We value that relationship. We'll continue to uh, cultivate that relationship. Prime Minister's visit, very risky one, wanted to send that message that even if you are ruled by someone who's reviled all over, our relationship with the state of Israel, and we want to send that message that we are with you. But we will pay the price for our relationship with Israel in other domains.
I'm saying there's that cost benefit balance that is always there, and currently with this particular region in a this thing, I mean, news is coming out. Israeli fighter jets have dropped 1,200 separate munitions in the past 24 hours itself. So
Yeah,
you know, is
they will,
escalating quite heavily.
they will do that. And Europe, of course, is mum. They don't know which way to turn, uh, and they are making very mealy mouthed statements, uh, which because they don't want to go against Trump and America. At the same time, they can't support Iran, so they are making absolutely vacuous statements which mean nothing, and that's where the state of the world is.
Indeed, sir. Thank you so much for that. I'll
Pleasure.
need to catch up with you again once this
Yeah.
thing. I hope it settles down, and we will probably review it once again. Thank you for your
Okay,
time. It's always a pleasure, sir.
with pleasure. Bye.
Thank you. To the audience, please like, subscribe, and support the channel. Namaskar.
Do send me the